All right, first we're going to talk about a saint like I like to do. So we're going to talk about Saint Euphrosynos the Cook. And there's some really spectacular things about his life. I'll just tell it from, yes?
In St. Anthony's, when my relatives went from the kitchen in Arizona, they see an icon, a tree. Yeah, there's a really big icon.
It's pretty typical to have one in the kitchen, yes?
Our once this guy told us that he was cooking and put several stuff, he didn't know how to cook, and then he put several stuff in a bowl and feed to that saint, and then everyone ate it, and it was so good.
They liked it, huh?
Yeah, he put jelly and.
So I know that in Jordanville, in Jordanville there was a cook, but he didn't know anything about cooking. Now they just kind of rotated their obediences. He didn't know anything about cooking, so he was making a stew and he was cutting bananas and putting it into it. Makes no sense whatsoever, but he was the cook and they had to eat whatever he cooked. So St. Euphrosynos was a very simple man. He was probably, by our definition, mentally retarded. People probably thought that he wasn't very smart at all. He was illiterate, which means he couldn't read. He wasn't very smart. You know, when you talk to somebody, they don't seem like they're that smart. That was what he was like, and he would stumble on his words, and they thought of him as a fool. So he became a monk, and people abused him because they thought, oh, this guy's a moron. I can make him do heavy work. You know, I can get away without doing my work, etc., etc. So the fathers were often very cruel to him. And that's something that's sometimes hard for us to understand. Monasticism is very beautiful. So is, for that matter, Christianity and parish life. But there's always people that are doing bad things. Whether it be in a monastery, whether it be in a church, there's always people doing bad things. And so Euphrosynos was constantly abused, but he was a cook in the kitchen. Okay, so there was a priest in the monastery, and he prayed to God to reveal him the good things that are in store for those who love God. And so one night he slept, and he was carried to paradise. And so you could say that's just a dream. Well, it wasn't just a dream, because of what he brought home. So Euphrosynos was in paradise, and he recognized him. And Euphrosynos was still alive, but he was in paradise. And Euphrosynos was telling him, don't tell anybody about this. And he gave him 3 apples from paradise. And he actually, when he woke up in the morning with the bell from Atlas, there were 3 apples on his table. And they were I think they ate one and they kept one and they did whatever, shared to the brethren, the most delicious apple they'd ever tasted. So Euphrosynos was treated terribly, and yet he was holy and pious. And when people realized that he had been to paradise and everything, everybody was honoring him. So he didn't want to be honored. He left the monastery, and nobody knows what happened to him. He just left to go because he didn't want to be praised. So I guess there's 2 lessons, a couple lessons for sure. One is when somebody's odd, when they're weird, when they're not that smart, when they talk funny, etc., it's terrible as a Christian to make fun of them or anything else. It's a terrible, terrible sin. And you might be making fun of a saint. Because sometimes people either purposely act like they're weird, or they really are a little weird, and they also are holy. So we have to be careful, because we'll be judged for making fun of people, for sure. Absolutely.